Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we'll talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's pick up with Sarah and the crew as they're on their way to New York. Obviously, they've got to repair the car, and obviously got to make their way there so they can potentially meet the doctor, who's the dude that's going to help them, well, who's going to event time travel in this time frame. So you got Gary dealing with the aftermath of eating Hoover and how it's not sitting well on his stomach. I wonder if it's just a byproduct of him not eating humans that often, because the last people that he ate were Ava clones. So I don't know if that did something different for him, or is it just the circumstances is making him nervous about it. Whatever the case may be, you have Barad being on top of everything because it's because he's not high right now. It's yeah, I know stuff, so he knows how to immediately fix the car. And you have Nate just kind of mad at himself because it's yeah, I killed J. Edgar Hoover, and it's you made a mistake, it's gonna be fine. Sarah's still trying to be oh, it's all gonna work out. He's but we don't know that we'll actually be able to get a do-over. There's no guarantee that we'll be able to fix any of this. And for Nate, as a historian that he is, he's not only he killed an important figure in history, and as a historian that kills him on the inside. Yes, they've gone up against people before. Yeah, they've killed people before. I mean, they went through the Encores last season, but those were bad guys already that were already dead. So it's you didn't do too much to history. And yeah, they've made their little changes here and there, but they've tried their best to make sure that time and history stayed mainly intact. But I think for Nate, it's just knowing I'm responsible. Also that I even love her being oh, any other menace still would have done this, made that happen. And he's that's not funny. It's I mean, you don't know. Superman probably would have been in that situation. Kara could have easily been in that situation of a bullet bouncing off of them and killing the dude. It's yeah, you were just, yeah, what were you going to do? Let him kill you? So, I mean, it sucks that things played out that way, but Nate, is really down on himself about it. So, but obviously it's Hoover's supposed to be on a train, I think going to New York, but it's right, if he's not up there, history's going to change. So Gary's going to use some magic to make it so that he can look like Hoover. Luckily, they were able to just sneak on the train. Obviously, it's right, distract him with the bullet. It's oh, you're the bullet blondes, and it's yep. It's just once again, I just love how quickly their reputation is spread. But luckily, they got on the train, and so it turns into a situation of Ava and Sarah go hang out with Zari in the pocket dimension, and then you have the other Gary Barad staying with Nate, who is meant to look like Hoover with the spell and everything. And so it does work, granted, because they saw him before he took the magic. They see him as just Nate, and so Nate has to play the role of this douchebag of yes, Hoover wasn't a great guy in the grand scheme of things, because it's yeah, he started FBI and he led it until the day he died, but it's also the problem of yeah, but he also played a big role in kind of racial bias and stuff like that. So it's it's one of those nasty parts of history where he's a necessary role, but it also it comes with some downsides as well. So especially around Bayrod and Gary, it's Nate has to act like a dick around him. It's I've got to play the role of a bad guy, which Nate's a really good guy, so that kind of eats away at him. And it's because especially when everyone else, because it's oh, a lady's purse went missing, and then kind of looks to it, he's yo, but those are my people. And so it's oh, no one's leaving this room until we find that purse. Turns out a dog was responsible. So, but then they start thinking about a telegram or whatever that says, I can't remember what necessarily, somehow they got on the whole thing. I think it was people stopped on board a train and were oh, someone's going to try and kidnap Hoover from the train, which obviously never happened. And then we end up finding out in the grand scheme of things, the reason why this is happening is because of all the hubbub in Malin. It's in Midland, it's if none of this had happened because of the legends and all that, time going awry, none of this would be happening. So Hoover's getting kidnapped, but he wouldn't have been in the process of being kidnapped if they hadn't interfered. So now they have to figure out who's responsible. And obviously Nate and them kind of figured out right, if it's the train like maybe someone's going to try and mess with the train, but then it's like, or it could just be an inside job. And so they look to the engineer. His name is Igor. And now it turns into that complicated thing of Nate doesn't want to torture this guy, but that's how Hoover got information out of people, by smacking them around. I think that applied to anyone back then, but probably specifically anyone that was quote unquote a foreigner. So Nate's kind of in that tough spot of like, he doesn't want to do anything. He's like, you're a good guy, you don't have to, but it's also like, he has to play the role of, this douchebag Hoover. And I think it's so interesting because it's like, you're worth 1,000 Hoovers. And then Nate's like, I'm a nobody. And he looks in the mirror like, this isn't about me. This is about preserving history, because, you never know the full ramifications, the ripple effects that this will have, like the history not having Hoover, what that can do. So, Ava's usually all about preserving history, and so is Nate. Nate's a little lax about it, but this is such a drastic thing that it's like he's shifting a little into Ava mode. I mean, granted, she's not as worried because she's kind of caught up in belief like Sarah is, that like we can fix this. The big difference is Nate blames himself so much that he's like, I have to fix this. This is on me. Like, if we can't correct things, because he's so like, he's taking this upon himself, because it's like, I have to be the one to do it because I'm the one that's responsible for killing Hoover. So this all falls on me. Which is so interesting, because that still kind of actually goes back to the principle of why Rip chose the legends in the first, these people to be the legends in the first, at least the OGs. And I think the same thing doesn't necessarily apply anymore, but the original concept of the legends were people that history wouldn't miss, the people who had the least impact, but that argument doesn't reign true anymore, considering everything that the legends have done. Granted, a lot of it is because of the legends, but they've done a lot of good out there, so it's kind of like, no, like, they're no longer nobodies. It is a thing of like, you probably have done more for history going forward than Nate will give himself credit for, but he's just so down on himself in this moment. But ultimately, when it comes to time to get the information on Igor, he pretends like he's hurting Igor, but he's not. He's like, I'm not going to hurt you, but it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, Igor and Hoover had a run-in before. It's like, you were looking for someone beforehand, and so you wanted to you got the information out of him, like he's like, I didn't even know anything about it, but you interrogated me about something I didn't know just because I was Russian. My family, including like my wife and like child, had to leave, and he's like, I would never have anything to do with your kidnapping because I'm trying to stay as far away from you as possible. You get so caught up in what's right in front. You get so caught up in seeing enemies everywhere, you don't see what's right in front of you, because they were so caught up in all this, they didn't pay attention to the fact is that they switched tracks about 15 miles back. So that theory they had before, they were so distracted with this being an inside job and focusing on the enemy in front of them, quote unquote enemy, that they didn't see the old switcheroo, like what was happening right in front of them, essentially. It is that kind of, once again, that nasty aspect of just kind of like, right, he was so busy trying to fill the shoes of Hoover, he wasn't just being Nate at that time. He was too busy trying to play the role of Hoover. But it turns out the guys that are with them aren't even agents themselves. They're actually Capone's guys, which I'm like, hey, if I remember correctly, Capone was one of the encores they faced off in season 5, if I remember correctly. But it's like, yeah. Once again, it's like, this is because like this never happened because Capone was never able to get Hoover in a position where it's like, oh, like, I know exactly where you are, but there was such a big stake in Midland because of everything, the Bullet Blondes and him and everything, that it let Capone know exactly where he was. So, but obviously Nate wants to go out there and resolve this himself, because it's like, hey, I'm the one that it's on him to kind of fix all of this. It's like, everyone thinks I'm Hoover. None of this ever happened. So everyone still thinks I'm Hoover. So I have to take responsibility. So he's like, right, you got me. But they're like, who are you? The spell ended up wearing off. So it's like, right. He's like, I'm the guy who killed Hoover. It's like, wait, what? I was supposed to bring back Hoover's head. My boss is going to be super upset with me. It's like, well, I guess we can, like, bash your face in a little bit. And Nick's like, you could do that. Or you could forgive yourself, like realizing that you're just a guy that made a mistake. He wasn't just talking to that guy, he was talking to himself. It's just like, breathe in with him. Breathe out. Say, I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Don't you feel better? no. It's like, well, obviously he does. So tying this in with everything going on with Sarah and Ava and Zari, Sarah and Ava go back to the pocket dimension and they run into Zari, who's been popping Bayrod's gummies, which obviously, like, Bayrod can be pretty, like, his way of dealing with things, like, getting high and stuff like that. It's like, I guess at least he knows how to, like, pace himself. Like, Zari was trying not to feel like herself, so she just kept going and going and going. At least, like, Bayrod is functional high. Zari isn't as much, so it's a situation of, like, right, you go ahead and deal with what you're doing, and, like, me and Sarah, like, come to us, but, obviously not bother us for a bit, or, like, a lot of I forgot what it was. They were saying, like, oh, you could give us a little bit of time, or a lot of time, and Zari's like, ew, that's gross, moms. I love that. Because it's like, yeah, it's like, no one needs to know about, it's like, you guys are like our moms. It's like, we don't need to know you're up there, like, banging it out, especially, it's because, like, Ava and Sarah do play the role of, like, the moms in the group. So I thought that was cute. But I love that Ava tries to come down and help Zari, because it's like, right, you both have your different coping mechanisms. Like, you're a doer like me, so let's give you a project. Oh, you can clean up, get rid of all of John's vibes here and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, and for Zari, it's better than listening to you guys have sex because you're really loud. She's like, we're not that loud. And it's like, she basically repeats Ava's safe word, which Ava brought up earlier, and she's like, I have no idea what that even means, and she covers her mouth because she's so embarrassed. I was like, that's so cute, that's amazing. I mean, you guys have every right to kind of go as loud and as crazy as you want. I mean, it is your honeymoon after all, so I love it. But Zari finds, like, which of course John's gonna have a refrigerator that constantly, like, fills over and over and over and over again with the same, like, whiskey. I'm like, of course. That's the only thing in the refrigerator, and that's the only thing that repeats in that refrigerator. I wonder, could you put something in there and then take, like, would it automatically be enhanced by the spell? So, like, if you put some cheese in there, would it constantly? Probably not. It's probably just the whiskeys is only thing that's probably enchanted. But I love that Zari pulls it out. And then in this episode, after that, she kind of go conspiracy mode, because she's like, wait, if there's one Wave Rider that destroys another Wave Rider, what if there's a third Wave Rider? And she's a fourth Wave Rider. And immediately I was like, is she kind of on the track of, like, right, this is like a loop situation of, like, if we do get another Wave Rider, she didn't necessarily go down the route of thinking I did, because like I said, I went down the, like, oh, it has to be a loop thing of, like, right, maybe this was supposed to happen. She doesn't necessarily, but she kind of thinks, like, oh, maybe, like, how many other Wave Riders are there? I mean, it's time travel and stuff like that. So I don't know whether she's referencing, like, oh, there's going to be, like, even if we get the Wave Rider fix, like, there's going to be another Wave Rider to show up, or, like, I don't know if that's the route she was going down. But then, like, she goes full-blown conspiracy mode, because she starts listing off, like, oh, the list of suspects who could be responsible. I love one says Rip Hunter. There's one that says Ray Palmer. Granted, I think that's in a pile of, like, that's kind of wild and absurd and crazy, because one of those people included them. It's like, oh, Malice, whatever. I love that. It's like, yeah, literally referencing, and it's like, when you look at that in the grand scheme of things, we didn't get to see all the names, but you're like, that's a lot of people the Legends have made. I mean, God, you've been running for 7 seasons, so of course you're going to make a lot of enemies. There's your big baddies and then your smaller big baddies, so I thought that was fun. I even love they even added David Bowie to the list. It's like, oh, I mean, we were kind of a big inspiration for that song he did for us, so I love that. But then there's one that we never got to see, and it's like, this? It's like, I know, it's pretty wild and crazy. And it's like, well, we've been chased by a demon dog, so it's not like we can't, like, knock anything off the list. I was like, what is it? Who is it? And then, like, they help out with the Nate situation, because all of a sudden Hoover starts popping up, and I'm like, wait, how are you, wait, 2 Wave Riders, 2 Hoover, what's going on here? This isn't making any, I'm like, what happened? I'm like, it can't be an encore situation, Ken. I was like, what's going on here? And then ultimately, he starts being the badass, like, taking everyone down, using people as a shield. Like, he's taking these monsters out one by one. And it's like, oh, he has to be stopped, or, like, more innocent people will get hurt in the process. And then, Sarah flips and bashes him overhead with a very specific bottle of wine. And it was like, wait, there's no blood. I was like, because the moment she ripped the face off, I was like, he is a robot. I was like, oh my God. two things. One, while he was doing his thing, I was immediately like, wow, he's going full-blown Terminator, isn't he? I was like, no, this couldn't. He's a freaking killer robot. I was like, that's crazy. Because I was literally just thinking as the episodes progressed, I was like, we don't know what our main shtick of this season is, like, anime-wise. Because, obviously, like, Season 1, Vandal Savage. Season 2, The Legion of Doom. Season 3, Mollis. Season 4, your Mysteries. Season 5, your Encore. Season 6 was Aliens. And Season 7, I was like, what's it going to be? I was like, could it just be them stuck in time? Which once again, I'm slipping on the intros. The fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, we got our like old-timey intro. Because I guess they are going to be stuck at this point in time for a while now. Once again, this might have influence over why they might not be taking part in the crossover. Once again, that depends on how everything lines up. But I'm assuming by the time like the Armageddon crossover happens, like they won't have repaired their situation yet. But it's like, yeah, we're dealing with killer robots now. It's like, okay, next logical step. That's because I feel like I might have heard that somewhere that robots were going to be the main. Maybe not. It seems like robots. It doesn't seem like we're going Android. It seems like we're specific going robots. Interesting timing, though, considering everything with Gideon right now, which we'll get to that in a little bit. But it is interesting that the bottle Sarah ended up grabbing and bashing over his head. It's like, oh, it's a robot. It's like, and I love that Zari's like, robot. And you have Ava being like, wow, what are the chances? And so it's like now the robot's trying to self-destruct, but it has pinpointed, it looked at the legends. So once again, I'm still leaning towards the whole loop thing of like, this had to happen so they could stop the killer robots thing of like, we had to be stuck in time to find out about it. Because if we don't, we erase it, you know, it has to be a full circle. Like the Wave Rider has to be destroyed so that or was it someone else? Was it like robots or something like that? Because later on we find out about the Legends' potential future and outcome. So maybe they end up getting replaced by robots, and that's what happened. But I'm still on loop territory of like, yeah, this is all meant to happen type of thing. It has to happen. So I expected that the robot to go full-blown explosion and take out the dead mobsters nearby. It's like, no, it was just enough to kind of self-implode and just kind of destroy itself, but also to leave nothing behind. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But like, who's behind the killer robots? We'll ultimately have to wait and see. Maybe it has to have something to do with the Legends, like visit to New York with time travel and everything. So there's that. Then we, check on Spooner and Astra dealing with the Gideon thing. Gideon isn't talking, and it's like she can't talk, and she's acting kind of a little weird. And I was like, is her brain a little scrambled or whatever? But it seems like, they're trying, like, obviously, Gloria's getting associated with like, oh, like this is what a computer is, and obviously for Astra, the complicated thing is like Gideon's a constant reminder of her biggest mistake. That's why she's like very short with Gideon kind of snaps at her a lot of times because Gideon's trying to get something across, but she's like biting these apples and putting like smiley faces. And at one point she puts them in a box, and then and immediately it was like, oh, there's 6 people. I was like, I'd assume that has to be like the Legends, because that is because it's Sarah, Ava, Nate, Gary, and Behrad and Zari, right? So like there's your 6, so it's supposed to represent them, but like that wasn't getting across. But I was like, and then obviously her squishing the box is like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So it was like the entire episode she's trying to explain it. And I even love at one point in time, like, because Astra's like, yeah, it doesn't matter, she's not human anyway. And it's like, oh, she has a pulse and everything. Gloria, it's like, yeah, she is a person now. And it's like, yeah, because you made her, technically makes you a mom. And you have like Astra being like, what? No, I ain't nobody's mom. It's like interesting that, I think that's actually interesting if they kind of go down that route, that like they kind of make it kind of a thing of like, I mean, you wouldn't be the first one that had to deal with a grown-up child, a very complicated situation. I mean, Oliver's been there. Well, Oliver and Felicity have been there. Barry and Iris have been there twice. So, I mean, it's a different situation because his children are older, but, Jefferson Davis has to be, not Jefferson Davis, Jefferson Pierce had to be there as well. So I don't know. I just think that's fascinating. I just think like almost like if she has to play that mother role, especially considering like her whole circumstances with her mom and everything. Like, so I think that'd be almost befitting in certain regards if she I wonder, once again, I don't want to know anything, but this actually makes me wonder about a certain role someone has this season. I'm wondering, is this android role going to play into that, or is it just going to be someone looking like said person? Once again, I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to take the chance someone might accidentally spoil what this role is, because like I said, I don't want to know until like it pops up in the show. But I wonder, does it have any correlation with like the potential killer robots we're going to have to deal with? That's just definitely going to be interesting. Of like, it's almost going to be like there's the Marvel comparison, the LMD storyline in season 4. There's definitely going to be a neat comparison to that. Like, well, how do you tell the difference between a robot and an LMD? Like, will they be able to fake being human, or what? Like, who's in it? Who's a robot? Who's a killer robot? Who isn't? Maybe there's going to be a clear way to like. I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting how they play that up this season. I think that's going to be a thing we see throughout the season. But obviously it's like you have Astra also feeling useless. It's like, yeah, like, because what can I bring to the Legends? Yeah, I might have my magic, but she's worried about screwing things up. But Spooner's like, yeah, I don't have my alien magic anymore, and now like we're not dealing with aliens. Like, what good can I do? It's like, well, look at us. We're kind of like the useless pair from the Legends. So, and I love that Astra's response was like, ranchware. Once again, I love the budding friendship between them. But her mom brought up something really interesting where she was like, yeah, you couldn't talk until you were like 6 years old, but anytime you like hugged me or touched my hand, like we could communicate even without words. It made me feel like you understood what I was saying. And so Spooner tries it again, and she touches Gideon's hand, and it turns out she can hear Gideon's thoughts. So I guess it's a thing of, I don't know if it's a telepathy ability. Maybe her innate thing is a telepathy ability. Maybe it's left over from the Fountain of Imperium, or maybe this has always been an innate ability she said. Well, no, because it's definitely an innate ability, because it's always been there apparently since her mom says what she said. So maybe it's like, maybe she's kind of either a telepath or an empath. Like, I feel like being able to hear someone's thoughts, it might be a combination of the two, because I feel like those can be a little interchangeable sometimes. It's more so about knowing someone's feelings, but Gideon was like worried and scared, so because like Maggie from Charmed, her powers kind of worked like that initially. So I don't know. I think that's kind of going to be a fascinating avenue to kind of go down deeper of like what that's all about. But after like she was doing it for a while, Gideon could actually start talking. So I guess like she has the power to like bridge any gap of like communications and maybe like restore it. Because initially like Gideon tried to like, I guess, use the circuits to like maybe like short circuit herself to like be able to like speak again. But it's like, right, she's human now. She's not a machine, so it didn't work. But it turns out, yeah, the Legends, the guy who invents time travel, if the Legends make it there in the next 2 weeks, like they're going to die. So it's up to Spooner, Astra, and Gideon to get there before them to save them. So interesting way to kind of spike up, what this season's going to be about. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, where all this ends up taking us. What goes wrong? Like, how do the Legends die? How do the killer robots play into all of this? Will Astra, Spooner, and Gideon be able to get there in time? We'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.